Hey guys, welcome back. This is DJ from the Culture War, and I have Shawni with me talking about another pop culture topic.
Hey guys.
So most of you guys know about this. We're going to be talking about Alec Baldwin, just the things that I've found out, some of the things that I don't think people have been emphasizing and talking about. Just so you guys are aware, before I get into this, my goal in this video and my goal in all my videos is to mainly just talk about the facts of the matter, what's going on in whatever, situation it may be. I try to say it how I see it, not how other people see it. And there might be overlap there, but don't expect when we get into this, I'm just going to go out and blame Alec Baldwin, because a lot of you guys know Alec Baldwin is a very annoying activist type person. And, he said some pretty messed up things, some ironic things in regard to what's happened recently in his past words. So again, let's just get into it. Shawni's going to interject. I'm just going to try to do a rundown real quick of basically what's going on, and then we'll get into what I think might have happened, who I think may be at fault. And there's going to be a lot of shared blame, more so than just pinning it on one person. So, all right, so let's get into it. October 21st, that was last week, Thursday. For me, Alec Baldwin accidentally shot and killed the director of filmography or photography. Cinematography. Let's double check, because I'm just director of photography. So he killed the director of photography. The bullet that ended up hitting her and killing her goes through her and then hits the director in the shoulder. The director's fine. They took the bullet out of his shoulder and it's all good. In that regard, unfortunately, the director of photography passed away due to the incident. I won't get into details about the whole incident. It sounds pretty horrifying about like the things she was saying as that was going on and stuff like that. Anyway, this article just keeps going on talking about, her life and so on and so forth. Anyway, so let's get into the nitty gritty. So I want to preface this by saying that it seems that there was a lot of negligence on this set from start to finish. There have been production issues. There have been safety incidents and violations, not including just with the guns. I also saw something today, which I'm going to also go over, regarding the assistant director, where there were things like the roads weren't properly cleared. So there was traffic on the road, like regular people traffic, driving cars and stuff like that is going on. So basically, when was this? October 27th. So a couple days ago, the police started their investigation. They started really going in on getting evidence and things like that. They suspect that there were live rounds. They apparently recovered 600 pieces of evidence. 500 were ammunition, not all of which seemed to be dummy rounds or prop rounds. They were using real guns. I know a lot of these articles say prop guns. They weren't using prop guns. They were real guns that were supposed to be loaded with blanks and dummy rounds and things like that. Okay, so according to the warrant, basically what happened is the assistant director, David Hall, who we'll get into, got the gun from the Armourer, who was, I believe her name is Halyna Gutierrez. I'm going to double check when we go to the next section, because I'm going to talk about her and her connection with this. But she handed him the gun, the assistant director, who then she checked it, he checked it. And then the assistant director hands the gun to Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin is then told that it's a cold gun. He goes on to rehearse the scene. Apparently, the film crew had to move from the area where they were rehearsing because there was an overcast, or more so a shadow, due to the buildings and stuff, casting over into the scene where they were rehearsing. And the lead photographer wanted to shift angles so they get into more of a straight line angle with Alec Baldwin, his firearm, the director of photography, and the assistant director all in basically one line. He goes practicing the scene. He pulls out the gun. He pulls back the trigger, and it discharges. Instead of it being a prop round or a dummy round, it was a round with live ammo, and the actual projectile, the lead projectile, was found in the assistant director's shoulder, like I said. Okay, so let's get into basically every step of the way where this failed, apparently. So the armorer that was on set was a 24-year-old. Her name is Halyna Gutierrez. I actually got it right. So she's 24. This is her second film shoot that she's been on as the lead armorer. She's had an incident in the first film that she was on, which was called The Old Way, on a podcast where she was invited to, called The Voices of the West. She was talking about basically when she took the first job. Her father is a well-known armorer within the industry. He's been a long time armorer there. She didn't think that she was ready, and I'll read the quote. Basically, it says, "It was really badass way to start off a really long film career, cool career. I'm hoping I was really nervous at first, and I almost didn't take the job because I wasn't sure if I was ready. But doing it went really smoothly," which that is not the case. There was an incident regarding her and her handling of the firearms, as well as on this set, and led to some discharges that happened on the previous set on The Old Way, that her first set. So like I said, she's the daughter of an expert Hollywood armorer named Del Reed. She learned a lot of her stuff through watching him. Apparently a lot of this started when she was 16, when he really started teaching her the ins and out of being an armorer, and more so firearm safety and things of that nature. But apparently she's been around guns her whole life. She then goes on to say in that podcast, which I'll link if you guys want to listen to the whole thing, I kind of just caught on by myself, just observation, watching him do things, or just knowing how firearms work. I think loading blanks was like the scariest thing to me, because I was like, ooh, I don't know anything about it. Goes on to say, and just briefly, I'll just touch on this. I don't think that the husband of the photographer, the lead photographer, is going to look for any type of civil case, because apparently he was caught at brunch with Alec Baldwin and also his son, and they apparently were talking. So I'm assuming that really the only thing that the producers and the people have to worry about, and Alec Baldwin and people involved in, maybe criminal charges rather than a civil suit. All right, so let's go and touch on what happened apparently on the set of The Old Way. So on The Old Way, Halyna Gutierrez, this is again her first role as the lead armorer on a film set. So this is apparently what happened. Nicolas Cage was, I guess, one of the stars in the movie. So apparently 2 crew members on The Old Way told the news network that, and this is CNN that they were talking to, that the 24-year-old fired a gun near an actor on the set with no warning, according to the key grip, Stu Birnbaum, who says he then asked for her to be dismissed. Nicolas Cage yells out, apparently, make an announcement, you just blew my effing eardrums out. And then he walked off. He screamed that at her, walked off set, and then I guess he began talking to Birnbaum, and then it continues. She was talking to the stunt coordinator. It gives more detail about what happened. She was talking to the stunt coordinator, and she just fired off a round. It sounded like she fired at the ground, and that's when Nick really laid into her. That's when I said she needs to go. She's the most inexperienced armorer I have had ever worked with. I have no idea why she wasn't let go, said Mr. Birnbaum. Another crew member on the film, who asked CNN not to name him, also raised concerns. And that person said she didn't carry the firearm safely. She had pistols tucked under her armpits and was carrying rifles in each hand. So not only she's walking around with pistols in her armpits, she has two rifles in both her hands, walking through set, and she was carrying the rifles in each hand that were ready to be used in that scene. And the firearm was aimed at people. She turned around. The pistols that were tucked under her armpits were pointing back at people. So through my research, I found out you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to have these locked up. you carry it and handle the guns with care, because again, a lot of the time these are real firearms that we're using here. A lot of time they're not using prop firearms, so anything can happen, as well as not just live rounds, which you aren't really supposed to be using anyway, but you can kill someone with a blank or a dummy round, and because of the concussive force, as well as if, say, that dummy round breaks apart and then projects shrapnel out of the barrel, because you are still getting that concussive explosion to simulate the sound and effects of the gun. Whew. All right, so it then goes in, and we go back to the set of the Rust. So apparently this was her little prop table here, this little photo where she had guns just spewed out across the table, as well as ammunition, it looks like, because these are ammo belts and holsters, gun holsters. So you see the guns here. So apparently people on the set then talked they talked to people, and they said that there were a lot of red flags when it concerned her. According to the crew, Gutierrez didn't keep her weapon safe and locked up while filming, and this is a quote. The person says, "There's a lot of times where her little cart that has her weapons, I've been on other shoots where they're very safe and professional. No one handles those weapons but the armorer, and they keep them safe. She just had them on a cart unattended at times where anybody could grab or tamper with it." And then there were also reports that apparently she wasn't the initial armorer, but this person is saying that worked on the set was saying that the armorer has always been the armorer. And the person says, "I read reports where they're saying that an experienced armorer walked off and then they hired this inexperienced person, which is Hannah. That's false. She's always been working here." There were also incidents of a scene that they were trying to film where they were inside a old building. The old building, isn't the most structurally sound, and they didn't know how many people can handle that. So they told all the people that were up there with the people doing the working the cameras, they told all the people that were up in that portion of the building they need to get down and get out if they weren't needed. And also people apparently got a email that said, which runs counter to what the production staff was telling other media, whereas they were saying that in this email that apparently they obtained, they're saying that we're conducting an internal review of the safety protocols. As with an ongoing investigation, we are limited in our ability to say anything further publicly or privately, and ask for your patience in that regard. So apparently that was an email in regards to the safety issues that they were having all throughout the production of this film, that people obtained, versus the email that the press release that the production team has been giving the media, whereas they weren't aware of any complaints of safety, and they specifically used official. They said they didn't have any official complaints in that press release, but apparently they were at least aware, and everybody was aware, because they had meetings, at least 3 safety meetings apparently, and one of those meetings happened earlier that day.
This is all really unfortunate, but from what it appears here, a lot of it's going to come down to, in terms of like if a criminal case is brought forth, it's going to come down to whether or not this is negligence on like Alec Baldwin's part. Is this negligence on the overall just production crew? Like, it's a lot of people who this may fall on, and I really hope they do look at this as negligence on the armorer's part first and foremost, because a lot of people keep talking about Alec Baldwin. I'm like, but no one is talking about the armorer. Like, I see people like Tim Pool and them being like, oh, he's not properly handling a firearm, and I'm like, so are we not going to talk about how he was told he was handed a cold gun, he was rehearsing a scene, and the armorer has on record at this point been shown that she doesn't know what the hell she's doing? Like, we're not gonna talk about that? We're only gonna talk about Alec Baldwin?
And she has a history, like I said, like I went over, she has a history of this. And not only does she have a history of this, the assistant director has a history of this. So you have both individuals who, before Alec got the gun, who were supposed to inspect it, they both have histories of accidental discharges on set.
And it's even worse too, because now we also don't know who the chain of command is on top of that, because it looks like Alec Baldwin isn't like he's a producer, but he's not a producer in the aspect of like he's overseeing HR purposes and daily set to, day-to-day set duties and things like that. It seems like they have other people doing that. So in terms of hiring the assistant director and then hiring the armorer, that would, if he is not in charge of that, that wouldn't fall on him either in terms of negligence. So there's a lot of people that need to start answering a lot of questions, but I feel as though when we're watching like videos about this on YouTube, there's not enough YouTubers asking the right questions. Everybody just keeps focusing on Alec Baldwin because they just don't like him.
Yeah, so it's either like people are focusing on how Alec Baldwin is the main person at fault because, he's a producer and whatnot, but it would depend on in what capacity is he producing. Like Shawni said, is he overseeing administrative stuff, which I don't really think he would be because they keep talking about a production team. So I think that there are at most, because a lot of producers bankroll, and it seems like this is a pet project of his, so more than likely he is bankrolling it, and that entitles him to be credited as a producer. And then or he's part of the people funding it, and then they have a production team for administrative stuff. But I don't know in what capacity of that, because if it's his project, does that mean that all of this ultimately falls on him because he is on set and is aware and he's not like offset somewhere and like in a...
And how much of it, if it like, because the way when I first heard about this project was via Twitter, where Jensen Ackles, Dean from Supernatural, had tweeted that he would be a part of it, and the little the article that came along with the tweet basically was saying that this was like a passion project for Alec Baldwin and the director. They've worked together before and they decided to come together to create this movie. So I don't know if Alec Baldwin was involved in casting. Is he involved in just being the money guy? Is he writing? Is he like a co-writer or something? We don't know. And doesn't seem to be any information about that. So it's kind of hard for me right now looking at the story to cast all the blame on Alec Baldwin. But I can see how people would try because he is the one who fired the gun. And initially they didn't report that they were doing rehearsal. He was told he was handed a cold gun and the assistant director yelled that so everybody on set would be aware. So of course, to his surprise, during rehearsal, he's rehearsing the scene and he depresses the trigger and boom, it's not a cold gun.
Yeah. So, and then like I said, there's people on one side that don't like him because of his activists, because Alec Baldwin is an ass, he's a piece of shit. But there's also the other side that's defending him, like he has no culpability, which he very well might. But I just don't. What we're trying to figure out is in what capacity, and that's what the investigators are going with. So let me go to this next part, basically. So we're going to talk about the assistant director, David Hall, now. So apparently David Hall has several instances of this happening. One other incidence of this happening in 2019 and on the set of Freedom Path, where Halls was also the assistant director, and the incident caused a member of the Rocket Soul Studios produced movie sound department to jump back from the close by blast. So this is the individual was talking to Deadline. The producer was one of the producers was talking to Deadline about the Freedom Path and that incident, and he said that I can confirm that David Halls was fired from the set of Freedom Path in 2019 after a crew member incurred a minor and temporary injury when the gun was unexpectedly discharged. Halls was removed from set immediately after the prop gun, it's a real gun, after the gun discharged. Production did not resume filming until Dave was offset, and the incident incident report was taken and filed at that time. So he has that. Apparently he also has some complaints about him being very aggressive and intimidating. And apparently hours before the shooting, I didn't get to talk about this, but hours before, the unionized film crew left the film set. And in their resignation letters, the crew members listed a wide range of complaints, including lack of payment for the 3 weeks, no lodging, and perhaps most importantly here, concerns of on-set gun safety. There are at least 2 prior incidents of the gun going off on this set. After the mass resignation, the producers allegedly brought in a non-union crew, like I said, to replace the union crew, and that was earlier that day before. So apparently they got a search warrant. And these are some affidavits that, some excerpts from the affidavits that I want to talk about too. Before we do that, actually, let me talk about this where so this is apparently some other stuff highlighting the issues of the assistant director. So this guy who's an armorer, he was in the Israeli army. He said no crew member should be handling a weapon of any kind other than an armor. Designated prop person or actor, full stop, Goldstein told the Post. The armorer must clear all firearms with the first assistant director when bringing them on set and verify that they are unloaded. Then the armorer does the same thing with the actor, but the firearm does not lead to custody of the armorer, which apparently happened because she handed the gun to David Hall. Hannah handed the gun to David Hall. And then apparently there was a 911 call obtained by the Washington Post where the script supervisor was saying this effing AD that yelled at me at lunch asking about revisions. This mother effer, he's supposed to check the guns. He's responsible for what happened. And then apparently Hall carried a reputation. So this is going into the more where people call him that he is aggressive and intimidating. So apparently he carried a representation in the industry for being a taskmaster who was particularly skilled at keeping productions on schedule, but some allege that at times he cut corners in order to keep the projects on schedule, which does seem to be what's going on here. And then, like I talked about earlier, the roads they were filming on weren't fully cleared of outside traffic. Walkie-talkies, which should be remain quiet, save for the team operating the Russian arm, were filled with chatter. At one point, two vehicles on set almost collided. After the incident, the Mazzio threatened to pack up and go home unless everyone on set adhered to the proper safety protocols. Halls either truly didn't care or he was that bad at his job that he couldn't comprehend why I was so mad and what I was raising hell about. And DiMaggio apparently is part of a logistics company's co-owner of Gravity Production Services, a transportation logistics company. The only reason the crew was made of weapons presence was because the assistant prop master demanded Dave acknowledge and announce the situation each day. So apparently he wasn't doing that either. She said that she added that the prop master frequently admonished Dave for dismissing the talent without returning props, weapons included, or failing to make safety announcements. So you have, which also goes into with the armorer who would just have the guns just lying around, not in safekeeping, which is her job. But David also with other props is not making sure that they're all accounted for and people are returning what they need to return. So you just have a administrative nightmare in all regards, and a production nightmare in terms of safety and accountability. So let's go over the affidavits. During an interview with David Hall, when affiant asked David about the safety protocols on set in regards to firearms, he advised, "I check the barrel for instructions most of the time. There's no live fire. Hannah opens the hatch and spins the drum, and I say cold gun on set." And then it goes on. David advised Hannah when Hannah showed him the firearm before continuing rehearsal, he could only remember seeing 3 rounds. He advised he should have checked them all, but he didn't and couldn't recall if she spun the drum. And the affidavit, after the gun was fired, David Hall, this is another piece of affidavit, David Hall picked up the firearm from the pew inside of the church and took it to the armorer Hannah. Hannah then was told to open the gun so she could see what was inside. David advised he could only remember seeing at least 4 dummy casings with the hole on the side and one without a hole. He advised this round did not have the cap on it and was just the casing. David, so that was the one that that fired. David advised the incident was not a deliberate act. When affiant asked David about the safety protocols on set regarding firearms, he advised, "I checked the barrel for instructions," and then it keeps going. He checked the barrel for instructions most of the time. He couldn't remember if Hannah spun the gun. David advised when Hannah showed him the firearm before continuing, blah, 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 blah. The interviewer, Gutierrez, who is responsible for firearm safety on the film, insisted no live ammo is ever kept on set, which seems to be not true, because apparently that they found 500, like I said, 500 rounds, including a mixture of blank, dummy rounds, and possible addition of live rounds. You have the incident of, is this the one where they're talking about they went plinking? Yeah, they were shooting beer cans and stuff with live ammo with the same prop guns. And then this is when the crew walked out, because apparently the crew was promised lodging and things of that nature, and they didn't get it, and then they weren't happy about the unsafe conditions, and then this is when they left. 6 a.m. They were expected to show up for work at 6 a.m. as expected, according to Los Angeles Times. As the group packed their gear to leave, non-union crew came and replaced them. And then so we have that and that. So that's pretty much all that's going on. Basically, what it seems to me is that at every point in turn in the production and the chain of command in terms of responsibility, you have an inexperienced armorer who had an incident of a discharge on the previous set. The only other set that she's been on as an armorer, she had a discharge on. You have the assistant director who had a discharge on a set in 2019. He has a history of cutting corners. He has a history of not taking cutting corners in order to make sure the schedule is the production is following schedule. You know, he has a history of not taking people's concerns into account. And on this set, apparently you have several higher crew members who are complaining to him, including actors, and he's not doing anything about it in order to make sure these things are, up and up, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. I did see on one side of one of these links where basically the prosecutors are looking at the armorer and the assistant director essentially as main people in their investigation. So they're the center of right here, number 3, the AD and armorer are at the center of the shooting. And they've apparently hired lawyers, which they definitely should, because this doesn't look good for either of them. Because how do you, as the assistant director, you're supposed to be, double checking the weapons, and then you've got the armorer who obviously is inexperienced, and I know she essentially got her job probably off of nepotism,
probably
because her father is a very, very well known and very well respected armorer in the business, and it just goes to show that people need experience, especially for jobs that require firearms.
Yeah, and what's crazy is, I also read that she wasn't even, and I believe it was on the one where it was talking about her interview for The Old Way, where she didn't even want to be an armorer when she got into the film industry. She wanted to be an actress, and then she realized that that's not really, she didn't really want that. And then she wanted to do the lights and camera work before she started doing the armory stuff. And then I guess at some point she got in with her dad, and then her dad started showing her, like, I guess, the ins and outs of the job, which I mean is fine, but she really wasn't ready to be taking on these roles. As if you see all the stuff that is coming out in terms of how she's handling her props, or her her guns, and what she's responsible for. You have live ammunition mixed in with dummy ammunition mixed in with blanks, and no one could she doesn't even in the interview that she did, she said she didn't even know like what the blanks were and how to check and all that good stuff. And then why is live ammunition mixed in with all the other dummy rounds and blank rounds? Who knows? Because apparently there were people going around shooting. So I don't know, someone else brought those bullets, and then they got mixed in at some point, because they were going around plinking, shooting beer cans and stuff off, after hours. And that was another thing. The AD, the assistant director, didn't make sure that all the props were brought back every time they ended shooting for the day. So that's another problem. So at every turn and pass, you have another problem. And then you have the production team who knew about these safety concerns, and nothing was done. So I don't know. Like I said, at most, Alec Baldwin will probably, if they do give him charges, will more so be in a administratorial capacity rather than the actual act of firing the gun and then killing the woman and injuring the director.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so that's just basically my thoughts on it. Is there's a lot of blame to go around. I'm not here to just dump on Alec Baldwin or anything like that, even though, again, I don't really like Alec Baldwin, but that's not what I'm here for. And I'm trying to figure out whose whose feet that does this lie at, who's at fault. And the two people, like Shawni said, it seems that are mainly at fault is the assistant director and even more so the armorer. So I don't know if they were covering for her, like the assistant director, because the gun really isn't supposed to leave the armorer's sight. I don't know if he was trying to make up for her inexperience. I don't know. So it's just all around, the wrong people were hired. The wrong people were in positions where safety was paramount, and other people didn't take these concerns seriously. So it resulted in this. Now I've seen a lot of people talk about, like, there was some California representative or whatever that was saying that there should be no guns on set anymore, and they should ban all guns on the set, and they should only use like the little plastic guns. But in reality, if people were doing their job correctly, this wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm. Basically,
that's where the buck stops with that. Is if they had the right people in place, if they were doing their job correctly, if they had stopped, because you're having all these issues, if you had stopped, solved all these things, regrouped, and then started filming again, you wouldn't have had these problems. So sorry if I repeated myself a couple times. I was trying to go through a lot of this information without a lot of positives and stuff. I think I did an all right job. Well, you let me know. What do you guys think about exactly who may be at fault and who needs to be, looked into here? Do you think it's all Alec Baldwin's fault, or do you think it's more blame to go around type of deal? Again, this is DJ and Shawni. This is the Culture War. Talk about pop culture, politics. Give me a like, comment, and subscribe if you would like to. And I appreciate you guys. Bye.
See ya.